Warm afternoon greetings to everyone present here. I welcome all the dignitaries, speakers, and participants to session 7 of this conference themed Wetlands for Food Security and Sustainable Future. I welcome all the
It is my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker for today, Dr. Lucy Turner. Dr. Turner is an accomplished aquatic ecophysiologist whose research focuses on understanding how aquatic animals function in the field of the Lucy Turner. Is particularly centered on quantifying the physiological impacts of ongoing and projected climatic change on aquatic invertebrates, with a strong emphasis on tropical species and ecosystems. Throughout her career, Dr. Turner has successfully balanced fundamental and applied research, which has naturally led to her growing interest in developing sustainable solutions for aquaculture. What truly sets her work apart is her interdisciplinary approach. She has an impressive track record of collaborating with social scientists, integrating biological data with socio-economic analysis to address complex challenges using a systems-based perspective. Her research not only advances scientific understanding, but also contributes meaningfully to real-world applications in sustainability and climate resilience. We are honored to have Dr. Lucy Turner with us today, and we look forward to gaining valuable insights from her expertise.
over to you, ma'am.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to your conference. Well, in the UK, it's early morning, but and it's a bit rainy, but for you, it's the afternoon, and I think the weather is much better. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Is okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, let me just move this 1 second. Yes, okay. So my presentation today is really focused on the work that we've done for the last few years, or been a few projects that we've been working on for the last few years, focused on ecophysiology, crabs, and food security. And this has mainly been based in the Western Ghats area of India. And I've led the work, but all of these people whose names you see here on the screen are people that have been involved with the project. If you do have any questions, my email address is here on the bottom right, or you can look me up on the University of Plymouth website. So this work was originally funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund, and we've had top-up funding from the University of Plymouth as well. So, as I'm sure that we're all aware, food security really is a global issue, and that's because the world is going through a period of huge environmental and socio-economic change. And that's because the world population is projected to surpass 9 billion by 2050. And alongside this, perhaps the most pressing problem is going to be to produce enough food to feed all of these people. At the same time, our world is going through massive socio-economic change. So urbanization is increasing. People are increasingly moving from a rural environment into cities, and we have huge numbers now of mega cities that often are sited along the coastlines of our continents. But at the same time, we have freshwater systems that are inland and we believe have untapped potential for their ability to actually provide some of the protein that is needed for the future food and protein security of our world. So in India, food security very much has moved to the main focus being on protein security. So that isn't only focused on producing enough protein, but really to think about how we can do that in a sustainable way, both economically and environmentally. At the same time, these sources need to be safe, they need to be nutritious, and they need to be desirable. People need to want to eat them. There's no good developing a new product if no one's interested in eating it. And they also need to be accessible to everyone that needs to access protein as part of their diet. So if we think about then aquatic products, and particularly shrimp, this has been very much billed as a success in terms of we're able to produce huge volumes of protein. But this doesn't always come without any costs. So in some areas, this is very much a boom and bust crop, and it can cause environmental and social damage. So there's very much a move that we might need alternative species that can be developed on a smaller and more sustainable scale. And that's really because we know that food production is also stabilized by crop diversity. If we think of the main arable crops and protein that's produced in the world, we know that actually this is focused on a very narrow number of species, which actually leaves us very vulnerable to any impacts that may be on them in terms of their ability to cope or to adapt to sudden environmental change or other changes that may occur. If we're thinking about aquatic products, mud crabs have also been billed as an alternative to shrimp. In India, in particular, these are particularly limited to coastal regions, and that's because of the biology of these organisms. So, mud crabs need brackish water to complete their life cycle, which means that they're really only going to be able to be grown on the coast where we have access to that resource. But at the same time, if we look at this head of a paper here from the bottom right, we know that inland fisheries, so this is worldwide, this was a perspective piece written a few years ago, but we know that inland fisheries, in other words, freshwater fisheries, are often not really tapped into in terms of those metrics don't make it into the big data books. We don't really understand how much production is generated by these inland and freshwater fisheries. But there's a realization that they're actually really important and, they've been held up as being actually integral to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So particularly the ability to address poverty and also food security. But this, if we're going to start to think about these alternatives and developing alternative species for protein security, this really is actually a complex problem. I've highlighted that we're not just thinking about the biology of these organisms, but we also need to perhaps think of the wider picture, how they're used, who uses them, and the social economic system that comes with that. And just very quickly, just to highlight that we've started to use this systems thinking approach. So really to think about the entire system. So in previous work, so this was done by my PhD student, Alina Alpine, who worked on mud crabs in India. What she wanted to do was to really use this systems approach, look at not only the socioeconomic side of things, but also how this interacted with the biological attributes which enabled or not enabled the generation of extra production from mud crabs. And using this approach, she was then able to highlight there was 4 key points of intervention which could improve the sustainable use of mud crabs as a livelihood resource in the areas of India where she was working. And that would be adaptation to climate change conditions. And that was generated by empirical experiments that she did in the lab, looking at how climate change factors, say warming, changes to salinity, are going to actually affect early life stages of mud crabs. She worked with one of the main mud crab production facilities to look at how we can improve access to the seedlings that are produced by that facility. And then looking at the wider picture, she also understood by the end of it that we needed to increase access to land for aquaculture purposes, and there possibly might be changes needed to local governance systems. So what I just want to highlight here is that just this systems approach is very powerful when we're thinking about the entire picture. We can't do this work by just focusing on the biology, or for that matter, just looking at the socioeconomics without considering the biology of the organism. So that brings me really then to the main focus for what I want to talk about today. So the project that we've run for a few years now has been looking at this particular freshwater crab, Barytelphusa canicularis. And this is a widely distributed freshwater crab that's found throughout southwest India. If we look at the map on the left, when we started the project, we wanted to understand all the places that have been highlighted in the literature where people had actually produced scientific work working on this species to try and understand the distribution. And that's because in India, you have a really diverse freshwater crab fauna, and the taxonomy of that has been continuously revised over the last 50 to 100 years. But this map just shows all the locations where we think that this species was found. And as you can see, it's mainly focused on the southwest Western Ghats area. There were a few records, high up in the northern part of the country in the sub-Himalayas. As an aside, we've actually worked with colleagues up in those areas who have confirmed that actually that is a different species. But in India, you have these huge freshwater inland systems, huge numbers of rivers, lakes, streams, and this is why you have this huge diversity of freshwater crabs. So freshwater crabs, if you haven't come across them before, they look like any marine crab that you would find on the seashore. They're true crabs, so they're brachyurans. And the main difference is in their life cycle. So these crabs, they carry out their whole life cycle in freshwater. They don't go to the sea. They don't release fertilized eggs into the ocean. Instead, they carry their eggs with them, which eventually hatch, and then they brood the baby crabs, which we can see here in this picture on the bottom left. And if we're starting to think about how these crabs could potentially have a role in aquaculture, they also are continuous breeders. So that means that they breed essentially all year round, and they produce a lower number of larger eggs. So they make more maternal investment into each egg, and that's because they're going to carry those baby crabs around rather than broadcast spawning into the ocean. And again, staying with the biology then, and thinking about some of the questions that we first had when we were working on starting to work with these crabs, what we wanted to look at was the fact that these crabs are distributed over a very wide area. India is a vast country, and even if we're just focusing on that Western Ghats region, we have got a whole range of habitats that experience different climatic regimes, different temperature regimes. We've got relatively high areas, on top of the Western Ghats, and we've got the same species that also is found, very close to sea level. So that really got us thinking about physiological diversity. And physiological diversity is just looking at the differences in physiology within and between different species. So in this case, we know that physiological diversity is really a key driver underpinning species biogeography. And this has been reviewed several times over the last 5-10 years. And what I just want you to take away from this graph is that although we know quite a lot about physiological diversity of aquatic systems, so these graphs are just showing thermal limits as a function of latitude. And these are all meta-analyses. So these are collecting data from the literature, and they've been split into marine, intertidal, freshwater, terrestrial systems, and ectotherms and endotherms. What I want you to take away is if we look at the middle two panels of this graph, that freshwater systems are really underexplored. We know relatively little in general about physiology of freshwater macroinvertebrates, and also that we know relatively little about physiological diversity. So there's not been many studies looking at diversity of physiological endpoints within a species. And most of this work has also focused on regional factors. So as we can see from these graphs, it's looking at thermal latitudinal gradients. So that's looking, over over entire latitudinal range in some cases, and looking particularly at the response to temperature by these particular species. If we think then about freshwater systems and species, we also know that they are some of the most vulnerable. They're going to be some of the most vulnerable to climate change. And if we look at this panel of graphs seen on the left, taken from the literature, this is just looking at the different projections from the IPCC in terms of the different scenarios for emissions and continued emissions that we can see, even with the average scenario, so the yellow lines and the yellow colours on the bars, that we can see there's going to be a significant increase in temperature in freshwater systems. And this is kind of worrying because if we go back to the previous slide, as I said, most of the work that's been done looking at physiological diversity has really been focused on marine species, intertidal species. We know relatively little about what's happening in freshwater systems. And if we look on the right-hand side of this slide, we can see that freshwater crabs, despite being one of the most ecologically important macroinvertebrate groups in inland, so freshwater systems, they actually are relatively understudied. So if we look at the number of publications, so this was 2003 to 2019, and again, this graph is taken from a meta-analysis done by Toll in 2022, we can see that most of this work is focused on crayfish, prawns, relatively little numbers of publications. We're talking about, less than 10 publications a year have focused on freshwater crabs. And again, most of this work, if we look at the pie charts and looking at this by world region, depending on the area of the world that you're in, there are relatively few papers on freshwater crabs, even if they make up, some of the largest amount of work in a particular region. So if we look at the Indian Malayan region, there were around 40 papers, but most of these have been on freshwater crabs, but that's a very small amount of effort if we think about the number of freshwater crabs in that region. So going back to our own work then, and thinking about how we might start to try and look at some of the attributes of these crabs and how they might be suitable for aquaculture. We really wanted to look at this from a biological angle as well as the socio-economic angle. So for the biological system, we had a number of objectives. So firstly, we wanted to understand what is the extent of the local physiological adaptation in this species. And that's because, as I've said, this crab is widely distributed. Even, within India, India is vast. Even in the Western Ghats range, it is distributed over a really wide range of habitats, different climatic regions. Before we could do that, though, we needed to understand actually, is this crab the same species in all locations? And that's because it is widely distributed and because of the life history of freshwater crabs, that they reproduce in the same freshwater environment. They don't tend to cross land long distance. And we wanted to understand, was this one species or was it several species in each of these locations? And then we wanted to understand the extent of any population physiological diversity. So just seeing if we looked at different populations of these crabs to understand what would happen under warming scenarios. So essentially, how do they respond to temperature? And also look at the effect of season. Season here being as a proxy for rainfall and water temperature, which of course varies quite significantly if we're thinking about the southern tip of Kerala and the north of Maharashtra. And then what we wanted to do was to try and use these metrics to disentangle the effects of these regional and local factors. So regional being the location, the latitude, and local factors being those effects of warming and season on the distribution of these species. And finally, to think about the implications of these findings for future aquaculture. Alongside this, we also worked on the socio-economic system. So we wanted to understand at the moment, who is it that's actually catching and harvesting this species? Who sells this species? Who eats and buys this species? And crucially, how much interest is there in Barotelphusa canicularis, so this species as a small-scale sustainable aquaculture species? Are people at all interested in moving from catching this species from the wild and to a system where they might, alongside that, or wholly focus on this being produced in an aquaculture setup? And again, think about the implications for future aquaculture. So for our methodology, for our sampling locations, we worked along a 1,700 kilometre latitudinal gradient. If you can see here on the map, so we've got sample sites from the tip of Kerala at the bottom in the south up to Aurangabad in the north. And we worked along an elevation from essentially sea level at 10 metres up to 700 metres over the top of the Ghats. So firstly, we went to these 6 sites and we collected 30 individuals at each of these sites, and we used molecular ecology. So essentially we sequenced a mitochondrial and a nuclear gene from these crabs to try to understand the extent of speciation in these populations. Alongside this, we also collected animals from each of these sites that were taken back to our base at NCBS in Bangalore. And what we did for these animals is that we measured their metabolic rate, so essentially their metabolism at rest. And then we also warmed them up over 3 days to 30 degrees C, and then kept them at those temperatures for around 10 days, and then measured their resting metabolism again. And that allowed us to test for any population differences in latitude, as season, because we repeated this work in different seasons at different times of the year, and also understand any effect of warming. Essentially, what we were trying to do here is try and understand if the physiological response differed between these populations. And what we found, if we look at the molecular ecology data, is that firstly, if we look at these color codes on the map, on the left-hand side, these are mapped onto a haplotype network. So this is just showing all the different signatures found in these DNA sequences. And essentially, what I want you to take away from this is that all of these haplotypes were private. So what do I mean by that? So essentially, at each site had a specific DNA signature that was only found there. That's not surprising when we consider the life history of these crabs, and we know that they say have this life cycle that have their whole life cycle in a particular freshwater lake or stream or system, and there's very little mixing. And these FST values, so for anyone that's familiar with looking at FST data, so this is just a metric of how different these DNA sequences are between each of these populations. These were actually very high. So FST is typically somewhere between 0 and 1, 1 being the most differentiated and 0 having hardly any differentiation. And what we can see here is that all of these FST values are actually very high. But if we consider these within the context of FST values that are found for other freshwater crabs, for other populations of freshwater crabs, this is within the range of values that we would expect. So essentially, we were very confident that we had one species that we were examining rather than 6 different species of this crab. If we then look at some of the results from the physiology, and I'm going to show you a series of graphs, but I'll walk you through them. So this graph here is looking at metabolism, so their metabolic performance, resting metabolic rates under normal conditions or normoxia. And what I want you to take away from this is that firstly, that the pattern of those bars very much changes with respect to population, which we can see the populations, the locations on the top, and that it also changed whether we are looking at 25 degrees in the red bars or an increase of 30 degrees in the blue bars. And that this changed depending on population when they were exposed to this higher temperature. So there was a significant effect of warming, and there was a significant effect of location. So essentially they did something different. They responded differently depending on the location. And there was an interaction between those two. So anyone that's used to looking at these data will also see here that I've got mass. So the mass of the crabs was a significant, had to be included as a significant covariate. And that's because despite our best efforts, and although we're confident this is the same species, there were some size differences between the populations. So working with these types of data, we would always try and normalize mass. So to work with groups of crabs that have, no significant difference in mass between each of our treatments. This wasn't possible. That's fine. We can include it as a covariate. But what I want you to take away from this is that metabolic performance really did vary depending on location, and it also varied with temperature. So some populations, you can see that metabolic rate increased with that increase in temperature, and that some of those, nearly all of those populations increased metabolic rate with an increase in temperature. Not all. So if we look at Orangabad, I mean, there's not much difference there in the data between the two bars, but they seem to perform quite differently when we compare those to the other 4 populations where it seems that there was a significant increase in temperature. So physiological performance very much depended upon the population being studied. When we looked at the effect of season, so essentially we wanted to understand, do these crabs then behave the same in different seasons? So in a dry season and a wet season. And of course, depending on location, that is going to vary depending on what they experience in their wet season and their dry season. And there was an effect of season. So actually these crabs behave differently physiologically in different seasons. Finally, we looked at the effect of low oxygen. So this is what we would term hypoxic performance, and it's a metric known as P-crit. Essentially, this is the critical oxygen tension. It's the percentage of oxygen in the water below which these crabs are not able to oxyregulate, so they're not able to maintain their metabolic rate. And what we can see here that actually warming had no effect on this. So for these particular species, they were very tolerant to warming, but they did respond differently depending on the location. So essentially, the populations, the location of each of these crabs, they did something different when we measured their response to hypoxia. So again, some extra evidence that physiologically, although these crabs are the same species, they are performing quite differently in terms of their physiology depending on the location that they are taken from. And finally, we looked at the interaction with this response to hypoxia, so low oxygen, and season. And again, there was a seasonally significant effect. At this point, we only had two populations that we could include in this analysis. But again, I just want you to take away I want you to take away that season did have a significant effect on this hypoxic performance. So alongside the biology, which to summarize, we have one species of crab that's distributed over these 6 different study sites that we worked on, but that physiologically they responded quite differently depending on that location, and crucially seem to respond differently to an increase in temperature. Alongside this, we also looked at the socioeconomics. So in these 6 areas, we spoke to crab catchers. So this was done with our postdoctoral research assistant who was able to speak the local language or to translate, depending on the region that we were in. And for the crab catchers, he interviewed them, and essentially he found out that freshwater crabs were caught for food or sold, or sometimes both, at all the locations that we were investigating. That climate change, which was articulated to us as changes in flooding or drought, as well as overharvesting, were perceived as the greatest threats to these crabs as a resource. And that 100% of the crab catchers surveyed were interested in farming of this species, but they also highlighted that they would need training to do this, and that there needed to perhaps be a seed production facility, as there is currently for mud crabs. We also surveyed crab traders, and 60% of crab traders perceived that their business was profitable, but they highlighted that training needed to be undertaken in crab export if they were to consider exporting these crabs on a larger scale, again, as is the case at the moment in mud crabs, and that in many places there was a need for a centralized, clean and hygienic marketplace to facilitate and grow their business to buy and sell crabs for the longer term. We also spoke to crab consumers, and regardless of the location, so it doesn't matter what location we were visiting, nearly all the consumers surveyed agreed that crabs are nutritious, healthy and tasty, but that they were expensive and that they had increased in price in recent years. And many consumers then reported that their consumption of crabs had decreased in the last 5 years, primarily due to this increase in price. We also went to some high-end restaurants and spoke to restaurateurs, 74% of whom reported demand for crabs all year. So these are not just people that sell freshwater crabs. These were restaurants that sold all types of crabs, depending on location. But they reported that they were a popular item on the menu all year round, and that 41% of these stated they would be willing to buy freshwater crabs in seasons when their normal choice of crabs are not available. So in conclusion then, is this species, so Barotelphusa canicularis, a new alternative sustainable target species for protein security? Well, first of all, our molecular data confirm this widely distributed crab is a single species. The physiology investigations that we undertook does indicate there was some physiological differences depending on location, and that sort of points to that there's probably local adaptation in particular populations. And from a socio-economic point of view, there was high interest from all user groups for a more reliably produced cultured product. So together, what I want you to take away is that these data help to inform our understanding of not only the physiological diversity and the biology of these crabs in tropical freshwater systems, but they also have the ability to inform the physiological suitability of this crab as a novel aquaculture species. And this work has been published in the Journal of Biogeography in terms of the biological side of the work that I've talked about. So our paper came out last year, Metabolic Physiology of a Widely Distributed Tropical Freshwater Crab is Not Underpinned by Genetic Differences. And it's currently in review in Society and Natural Resources in terms of the social economic side. So evaluating the demand for aquaculture of the freshwater crab. Barratelphusa canicularis in southwest India, a multi-stakeholder assessment. So before I finish, I just want to thank all these people that worked on the project. As I said, we were funded originally by the Global Challenges Research Fund, which was centralised funding from the UK government for research that was aimed to address the Sustainable Development Goals. We were also had top-up funding from the University of Plymouth that funded Alina's PhD on mud crabs. She's now gone to University of St Andrews, but has carried on working on this project as well. In India, we were hosted at NCBS in Bangalore, and then we've also worked quite closely with the team at NITA University in Mangaluru and alongside Rashmi Naina at Manipal University and others at the College of Fisheries. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for taking us through food security and providing us with insightful information. Now, to formally conclude this session, I invite Dr. Christina to take the podium and deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Lucy Turner, for the enlightening talk on food security, namely protein security. We are truly grateful to you for sharing your time and insight on one of the most delicious crustaceans, the freshwater crabs, their physiological diversity and socio-economic status. Driving home the truth that if done smartly and sustainably, aquaculture is the path forward to increase global food production and trade opportunities in changing times and a changing climate. Thank you.
Participants of the next session, please stay here. All the participants kindly stay here.
Biologist, co-founder and trustee Care Earth Trust, Dr. Vanita Williams, Head of the Department and the Convener, Dr. Benita Golda, Assistant Professor of the Department and the Organizing Secretary, Dr. Jansi Malan, Assistant Professor of the Department and the Treasurer. Thank you, respected dignitaries, for gracing the dais. A very warm welcome to the valedictory session of ISWETCON's 26, the International Symposium on Wetlands, Ecological Significance, Threats, and Conservation Strategies organized by the Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, Women's Christian College. I am Sangamitra Vijayan, a third-year student of the department, and it is my honor and privilege to be the host for today's valedictory session. On behalf of Women's Christian College and the Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, I extend a cordial welcome to our esteemed dignitaries, respected resource persons, faculty members, research scholars, and all participants from other institutions and WCC. As we gather for the valedictory session, we look back with pride on a truly enriching symposium, from the inspiring inaugural session, which featured the release of the book, A Pocket Guide to Wetland Birds in and around Chennai, to the insightful technical sessions and interactions that followed. ISWETCON's 26 has been a remarkable academic journey. And now, as the symposium comes to an end, we carry forward the knowledge gained over these 2 days. As we come to the close of ISWETCON's 26, we pause to offer our heartfelt gratitude to our Lord Jesus Christ for his abundant grace and constant presence throughout the symposium. Psalm chapter 107, verse 1 reminds us, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. We thank him for his divine guidance in every event, session, deliberation, and meaningful interaction during these 2 days. In this spirit of thanksgiving, let us prepare our hearts for the prayer song. Thank you, Lord, a humble offering of praise, acknowledging God's enduring love and faithfulness. I invite the third-year students of our department to render the prayer song. I now request the gathering to rise up for the prayer. For the process evaluation. To formally welcome this gathering and to introduce the valedictory speaker, I now invite Dr. Jansi Merlin, the treasurer, to deliver the welcome address and introduce our speaker for the session.
Distinguished valedictory speaker, Dr. Ranjit Daniel, sir. Honorable guests, faculty members, researchers, students, and dear participants. A very good afternoon to you all. As we commence this valedictory session, let us reflect on our responsibility as stewards of creation. The Holy Bible reminds us in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. This divine mandate resonates deeply with the spirit of this symposium and with our collective responsibility towards wetlands, ecosystems that sustain biodiversity, livelihoods, and ecological balance. It is with immense pleasure and gratitude that I welcome you all to the valedictory session of SWETCONS 2026. This symposium stands as a shining example of the power of institutional collaboration, and I wish to place on record that SWETCONS 2026 would not have been possible without the strong academic partnership and constant support of CARE Earth Trust. Their vision, expertise, and field-based conservation experience have been central to the conceptualization, planning, and successful execution of this international symposium. In particular, we express our deepest appreciation to all members of CARE Earth Trust, whose scholarly guidance, strategic direction, and unwavering encouragement have shaped this into a symposium. And their invaluable role at every stage, right from framing the core themes to bringing it together, the eminent speakers and the experts to the wetland conservation was great. We are also gratefully acknowledging Ms. Anchana Venkatesan, the program lead at CARE Trust, whose active engagements, professional insights, and generous support significantly strengthened the scientific content of this symposium. Her contributions exemplify the spirit of meaningful collaboration between academia and conservation practices. Rooted in the Christian values upheld by the college, this partnership reflects our shared belief that knowledge must lead to service and research must translate into responsible action for the care of creation. At this significant moment of our conclusion and reflection, it is my privilege to extend a special welcome to our valedictory speaker, Dr. Ranjit Daniels, a distinguished ecologist, conservation biologist, and one of India's foremost authorities on biodiversity and wetland ecosystems. His work seamlessly integrates science, policy, and community engagement. Dr. Daniels holds a PhD in ecology from the Center for Ecological Sciences, Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, where his doctoral work focused on developing conservation strategies for birds, an area that continues to define his lifelong commitment to wetland and landscape level conservation. His academic journey began with agricultural sciences and entomology, giving him a very strong interdisciplinary foundation that bridges many disciplines together, including ecology, biodiversity, and sustainable resource management. Over the past 4 decades, Dr. Daniels has coordinated and led numerous nationally and internationally significant projects, including Inland Wetlands of India program, biodiversity assessment across Western and Eastern Ghats, mangrove rejuvenation, sea turtle conservation, and post-tsunami wildlife impact assessments. His work with institutions such as Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, UNDP, IUCN, FAO, and several international bodies reflects his deep engagement with conservation policy, science, and its practices. As the co-founder and trustee of Care Earth Trust, Dr. Daniels has played a pivotal role in shaping biodiversity conservation strategies, particularly for wetland forests and coastal ecosystems. As an elected fellow of the International Ornithologists Union and a prolific scholar with over 180 scientific publications and several books, his contribution spans across birds, herpetofauna, ecosystems, and even people-nature relationships. As a respected mentor, advisor, and educator, Dr. Ranjit Daniels has inspired generations of students, researchers, and conservation practitioners in India and abroad. His insights connects many things between policy and community action. We are truly honored to have Dr. Ranjit Daniels as deliver the valedictory address. As a token of our appreciation, I request Dr. Benita Golda, Assistant Professor, Department of Advanced Biology and Biotechnology, and the Organizing Secretary of the Symposium, to present a memento to Dr. Ranjit Danielson. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Please join me in welcoming sir with a warm round of applause.
Yeah, good evening, all of you. Yeah, so I was asked to give a valedictory address, and I told your head of the department, Dr. Vanita, that I would not come with a PowerPoint presentation and give one more lecture, So I instead prefer to consolidate what we learned during the past 2 days. We had very good lectures, very informative lectures. So I wanted to first listen to, except the last one on crabs, I couldn't due to some other commitment. So it was a learning experience to all of you. It was also a learning experience to me. I had a chance to meet many of my old colleagues and friends whom I had not met in last 20 years, 15 years, and so on. So in fact, Dr. Aparna Vatve, I have just seen her. In fact, I knew her when she was much younger, and now I saw her as a older person and so on. So it gave me a lot of opportunities to meet old friends, see a lot of very young people with a lot of enthusiasm, look at your posters, look at your photographs, and all the enthusiasm in you. So I thought I will more than give you a big lecture, I will give you some kind of a take-home message. You have to take home. At the end of the 2-day workshop, we'll have to go back with something. So first is that we all have to give a big hand to these 3 ladies. Yeah, they have very successfully conducted a very good workshop. In fact, if I can say correctly, I don't think in any college in Chennai has had a workshop like this with such good speakers and very well thought out themes and very well done. So they deserve a lot of appreciation. And well, they also worked very hard in bringing out that book. It's not easy to bring out the book, and they really worked hard. They didn't leave any stone unturned. They came to our office, they referred to material, they sent photos to me. So they really put in a lot of effort. So we have to appreciate, and a little wonder that we have had a very fruitful 2-day conference, because if you really put in sincere effort, we can get results. So with that little bit of introduction, I will just say a few things about what I felt about this workshop and what you should continue to think. In fact, I was wondering what I should focus on, because normally what I do is after I listen to everybody, I identify gaps. Some people have said something, some people have not said something. And if I'm ever asked to give a kind of a concluding talk to summarize the program, I usually talk about what was not said. You know, people have said many things, but they have not said anything. So I have identified a couple of things which I thought I will talk about. First is that throughout the talk since yesterday morning, everybody was talking about spiritual and cultural values. You would have also noticed right from the beginning, everybody was talking about it. We also had prayer songs, we also had prayers and so on. So, and this is also a Christian institution, you know. So I thought I will share a little bit about that and what is the relevance of our faith, because the whole world has realized that you can do plenty of science. And science can only tell us what we should do, but faith tells us what we must do. You know, so we have to ultimately be guided by what our beliefs, what are bringing up, you know, what are convictions. So that is what matters, and this has been realized by the whole world, not just me or anybody. So yesterday we spoke about Anjana Venkatesan spoke about cultural values. People spoke about spiritual values. People kept mentioning the name of God, God's creation, and all that was talked about. So what do we really learn from that? You know, what do we really learn from that? So many years ago, people said faith shapes culture and culture shapes faith. So these are interconnected. You cannot really take one out of the other. So these are, but we have to properly understand them and how beliefs lead to actions. In fact, not many years ago, earlier last year, we had an elephant festival in Gindi National Park. I thought somebody was here from that college who said she had attended that workshop. I think she's somewhere sitting. Can you put up your hand? Yes, yes. You had attended that, and there was a panel discussion. So that program was attended by elephant experts. It was also attended by activists. It was also attended by environmentalists, people's group, and so on. So the meeting was to talk about how elephants affect human lives and how human lives affect elephants and so on. So there was a panel discussion. And during that discussion, I was sitting with the chief wildlife warden and one elephant expert from Bangalore. Okay, as the discussion progressed, we had this debate about whether we can totally rely on science or whether we have to come up with some balance between, you know, our beliefs, our wants, our needs, our culture, guided by science. So I began because I was the person to kind of coordinate the discussion. So I started by saying two things are there. One is a scientist. A scientist can say anything and get away with it. You know, he can publish a paper, he can go and talk in a conference, you know, he can do things, do that, guide students, etc., and be done with it. But a manager like a chief wildlife warden is answerable. You know, when there is an elephant killing a human being or breaking down a house, he is answerable. So there is a difference between accountability and, you know, freedom of speech. So this is something that people don't often realize. So when I said that, that professor from Bangalore said, no, science is more important than anything. And she gave the example of Copernicus. Copernicus, all of us know. I'm sure all of you know. Copernicus was the first who said that Earth goes around the sun. Before that, everybody believed that the sun goes around the Earth. So she said how Copernicus broke down a very traditional belief, and then, you know, how science has contributed to different thinking. I didn't counter her because there was not enough time. But if you really think about it, despite Copernicus, we still say sunrises and sunsets. Correct. We never say that there is no word, no phenomenon that we have used to kind of replace. We still say sunrise, sunset. Even in your weather data that you see in the Hindu newspaper and others, sunrise time, sunset time. Okay. So ultimately, what happens is, although we know we are guided by science, we know the truth, etc., what comes is basically our tradition, our culture. So the decision making is always defined by what we believe, what our culture says, what our needs are, what we believe, what we have in trained. So this was realized by the whole world and not recently. So one major influence on the world's people is religion. Whether we like it or not, people do things because they are guided by their religious beliefs, where they go, where they worship, where they read, etc. So taking this into consideration, in 1986, all of you know the World Wildlife Fund. You would have heard. No, World Wildlife Fund was celebrating its 25th anniversary. So they had a very big conference in Italy, in a place called Assisi. So anybody knows what Assisi is all about? You would have heard about Saint Francis of Assisi. Okay, the famous saint who was very fond of animals. If you read books, you will know that if he was there, all the animals would come. Birds will sit on his shoulder. He will feed the deer. He will feed the other animals. So he was a monk, but he was very loving towards all animals. At least that's what the legend says. And all animals would come, he would understand them. If some animal is hurt, some animal is hungry, he would understand. So, in honor of him, they had this big conference in Assisi in 1986. So, where heads of all religions came. All religions came, and you can read in the net, there is what they call a Assisi Declaration. Assisi Declaration came out in 1986 about how all religions can unite to do something to conserve the earth. Now that is 40 years ago. 40 years ago, they all came together to decide what we can do to save the earth. So that is the Assisi Declaration, which is available in the net. You can read that when you go back and do it. Now in 1992, we had the Rio Summit. Now many of you would have heard of it. You may not be born at that time. But Rio Summit in Brazil, that is the Convention on Biological Diversity, which came into force, and today we are all guided by that. The National Biodiversity Authority, the Biological Diversity Act are all products of that convention. And when it was opened for people to accept, I think except United States and one African country, it was possibly Somalia, they did not agree with that. So they did not sign it. But all the other countries signed, and India also signed. In 1993, it was ratified, and by 94, it came to force. So countries adopted it. So one of the first things that they did as soon as they adopted that, they wanted to do what they call the global biodiversity assessment. So people wanted to know what we know about the biodiversity of the world. So this was a program started by the United Nations Environment Program in 1993-94. They started it. And a big program, 1,500 people, including scientists, economists, social science people, all kinds of people came together to draft this very huge document called the Global Biodiversity Assessment. By 95, it was completed, and then the document was brought out. Then they realized that it is purely a scientific document. People's mind, people's attitude, how they contribute to conservation has not been covered in that document. So when you give it to the different countries, some people may not like it, because only academicians may like it, but common people may not like it. So it was decided to bring a supplement called Spiritual and Cultural Values of Biodiversity. So that was again planned. So again, we took another couple of years and we brought out this book, Spiritual and Cultural Values of Biodiversity. If any of you want to see it, we have a copy in our library, the Kerala library. Because I was part of it, and that's why I'm talking about it. So that came out, and that actually documented every small religion, small culture, small faith, what they think about their biodiversity, what their values are, etc., and fully documented. But in the end, when there were discussions, I participated in a number of discussions. Lila College, there is an interfaith department, they often hold the discussions, call everybody, and then we have discussions about what we should do. Then in Chennai, there is if you go to Rayagada, there is the CSI Synod. Some of you may have seen it. They have a department of ecology, so they also call for discussion. So we discuss about what we can do and so on. So like that, we have had many discussions, but you can also read a lot of literature. But what has commonly emerged from all these discussions is that Christians are not doing enough to save the earth. This is the common outcome. There are books written, there are papers written. They are not doing enough to conserve the planet, to save the planet, and so on. So this has been an accusation, and many people accuse this attitude because of the teachings of the Bible. This is exactly what everybody says, So, but that is not true. It is just because people have not read the Bible. That is wrong. Because if you have any chance, any opportunity, you can be a Christian, you need not be a Christian. You take a look at it and you see what the Bible says. Because irrespective of whether it is a religion or not, let us just look at it as a book of history. The history of the Bible evolved in the deserts. So the most precious commodity was water. Everybody, if you read the Bible, there is so much importance given to water. And that is why water has become a very important thing in all rituals, whether it is baptism or anything, Jews, they used to wash their hands, wash their legs, It became a very important commodity because water was the rarest thing in that area. So they paid a lot of importance to that. So I will tell you how it relates to what I am going to say. Another thing is people who are not familiar with the Bible, there is an Old Testament and there is a New Testament. So the Old Testament has got 39 books and the New Testament has got 27 books. So it is about 66. So Bible is not one book, it is a compendium. Several people, more than 40 people have contributed to that compendium. It has been put together. There is no editor. Otherwise, it would have been an edited book like many other books that you see in our library. So it is a compendium, let us call it. So most people do not have the time to read. It's a very large book. And the problem is most of the time our churches, our preachers, the television, they all teach the wrong things. They neither understand the Bible nor they make an attempt to understand it. They just teach the worst things that one should be listening to. And the most important flaw about all our teaching so far is that this belief that when we die, we will go to heaven. Bible doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. Nowhere in the Bible it is said that we will go to heaven. But the Bible says that the earth will be restored and all of us will live on earth. That is the promise. The restoration is something that we need to understand. All of us are struggling to do something. We are planting trees, we are doing this, we are doing that, because we are trying to restore. But there is a promise that the earth will be fully restored and we can all live on this earth peacefully, happily. That is what the Bible says, the kingdom of God. This is never preached. We are instead, people talk about a whole lot of things and giving this feeling that Christians have no responsibility on earth. They keep saying this world is not my home. This is a very wrong belief, because yesterday Dr. Ramachandra said in the Bible there are 320 references to conservation. You heard, okay? There are many more. And we have a responsibility to look after our earth. We have the greatest responsibility. Most people don't understand, don't talk about it. And so I have to first tell you that henceforth, if you get an opportunity to read a Bible or you listen to your teacher in a scripture class or anything, you please remember that what is being often preached is not what the Bible says. Bible asks us to be faithful to God's creation. If you read Genesis, it says, after the creation that you read, whether you call it a metaphor or whether you call it real, whatever you say, after every day's creation, it says, and God saw that it was good. How many times this has been said in Genesis? Everybody knows. So what God saw as good, how can we destroy if we say we love God? This is the simple question that we can ask, irrespective of who you are, what you are. I'm not giving a sermon or anything here. I don't like to do that at all. I'm just trying to tell you the responsibility. If we say we love God, would we destroy what God created? This is the question. So we have this in mind, and this we have to use in, treating our wetlands wisely and so on, because water is very precious. Now, I just don't want to take anything longer. I also want to give you another insight, because everybody says Bible is the book of life. Tamil they say Jiva Vasanam, Jiva Vasanam. Yeah, no problem. I drink only water. No problem, no problem, no problem. Yeah, so Jiva Vasanam, it's a book of life. So if it is a book of life, only the biologists can understand that. You understand? So you are all biologists. So you start reading it and you will understand it better than theologians and people who come and teach you all kinds of things. Okay? It's a book of life. And only person who is coming here to preach, I am only trying to tell you that our responsibility is shaped much more by our belief than science, because we all know what we should do, but we are often made to do it because of our belief. That belief is very important. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say anything else. So I just want to give you one simple hint. If you are interested in whoever you are, if you are interested in knowing what the Bible actually says, you have to read there are 66 books. You just read 9 books of the Bible. You read Genesis fully, then you jump, you go to Isaiah. There is a book called Isaiah. You read that book. Then you jump, you go to another place, Ezekiel. You read Ezekiel. So these 3 books from the Old Testament, 39 books in the Old Testament, you read just 3 books from the Old Testament. Then you jump to the New Testament. You read the 4 Gospels. All of you know Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You read that. Then you go to the Acts of the Apostles. You read the Apostles. Then you jump, go to Revelations. Just these 9 books you take and you read. Then you know what is your responsibility towards the earth. You are not finding a way to go to heaven. You will never go to heaven. You have a place on earth and you have to fulfill your responsibilities on earth. And if you want to understand what your responsibilities on earth are, you just read these 9 books. Take these 9 books, read them very carefully. And I just want to give you one example of the value of wetlands. All of us know Psalm 23. We would have recited it from school, in church, in day-to-day use. People hang it in their walls, and in my house there is one. Over my dining table there is one board, 23rd Psalm. So King David, among others, he has mentioned, "He leadeth me beside the still waters." Still waters are wetlands. Okay, rivers flow, seas there will be waves, even big lakes there will be waves. So only place, even springs will be flowing. The only place where there is still water is a wetland. So those days, the word wetland was not used, because the word wetland was something coined only after the Ramsar Convention. Earlier, when I was a student of agriculture, wetland means rice cultivation. Wetland and dry. Wetland? Wetland is rice cultivation. Dry land is some other. Mention of a wetland. Now, another example I want to tell you about the promise of restoration. Okay, Mediterranean Sea. All of you would have seen. I think you should go back and read what Mediterranean Sea is. Mediterranean Sea is, for all practical purposes, a large lake, because it has got only one small opening between Spain and North Africa, through which water comes in Atlantic Ocean, enters in and goes out. Okay. Now, if you look at the history of Mediterranean Sea, Most of our early civilization developed around it, whether it was the Nile or whether it was Mesopotamian, all those civilizations. So it is the oldest birthplace of civilization on earth. And anthropologists know that human beings evolved close to water, and that is why we are such a water dependent species. You can read about it, plenty of writing about how we are water dependent. We need water for everything. Unlike other mammals, we need water for everything, so we are so water dependent. Now, the promise is that if you can see in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 47, if you're interested in reading it, you can note down Ezekiel chapter 47, verses 6 to 12. When you have some time, you can probably take a look at it. There is a promise that the Mediterranean Sea will be healed. What is meant that it will become fresh water. Okay, so people need fresh water. We are all losing our fresh water. Somebody today spoke, Dr. Subramaniam. He showed the whole globe and then one drop and said, this is fresh water. Okay, so we need more fresh water. Sea will become fresh water. That is what. But at the same time, it also says that the salt marshes will remain and the mangroves will remain. Okay, so that is something very, very important because homogenization is the biggest problem on earth. We want everything to be alike, but that is not going to work. So we need fresh water, we need salt water. So although it is not specifically said mangroves, it says swamps. Salt swamps are mangroves, you know that. What is the difference between a marsh and a swamp? Anybody can say difference between a marsh and a swamp? Nobody knows. We have been talking about wetlands for the last 2 days. A marsh is where herbaceous vegetation is found, like grass and cypress and small aquatic plants which are herbaceous. But in a swamp, you have trees growing. Somebody showed Myristica swamps today, swamp vegetation in the Western Ghats. So we have, so that is freshwater swamp. We have mangrove swamps, which are saltwater swamps. Okay. So that if we have to continue to live on earth, we will get fresh water. We will also have our swamps. We will also have our marshes. And then there is also a promise that all our rivers will have as many species of fishes as they are in the sea. Today, the biggest problem is we are losing all our fishes from our rivers because of dams, because of diversion, because of pollution. So what I am trying to say is I'm not trying to, convert you or, do anything like that. I'm just trying to tell you that if we believe, we will do something for the earth. That's all. We will not hurt something that we love. So first thing is that we have to learn to love. We love. We have heard about wetlands. Let us learn to love wetlands. So we have to go back home with this message that we have to learn to love our wetlands. So once we start loving our wetlands, we will not pollute it. We will not damage it. We will not want it to be drained to build a building there or a stadium there or a bus stand there and so on. So this is one message we have to go back. And I'm saying this because you have already been exposed to the values of wetlands, the importance of wetlands. Okay. Now all we have to do is that, we make a pledge. We are going back home. Henceforth, we will be very kind to wetlands. And I have tried to tell you this based on one religion that I know. Honestly, I don't know about anything else. This is something I know. And since this is a college where a lot of it is being talked about and taught, I thought it won't be inappropriate if I spoke about what I believed in. Okay, so this is a simple message that you have to take home with you. And also, contrary to what most people say about who will go to hell, who will go to heaven, Bible actually says, whoever destroys the earth will be destroyed. That is what it says. It says Revelations 11:18. If you don't believe me, you go home and look at it. Revelations 11:18. People who destroy the earth will be punished more severely than people, who do other kinds of mistakes. So what I am trying to tell you is that for a very long period of time, we have been misled. Let us honestly believe what actually has been said in our book that we believe in, and let us try to practice it. And if we practice it, then there won't be this blame that Christians are not doing enough to save the earth. Christians will do more to save the earth because it is their responsibility. And that is a responsibility that has been put on our head. We cannot run away from it. So with that little message, I want to go to the next thing I wanted to say was a lot of talks were there and a lot of presentations were there, but actually there was very little on Chennai. You know, Anjana's talk, she showed a couple of slides of places around Chennai like Unamancheri, etc. But specifically nobody addressed Chennai. We have had a conference in Chennai. So I also don't want to go deep into Chennai, but I want to tell you because many of you now would be quite inspired. You would all want to work on wetlands. You would also want to do projects. You want Chennai has at least 600 species of vertebrates without the marine. So this excludes the sea. Only the land and freshwater. We have 600 species of vertebrates in Chennai, fully documented. So, which is quite amazing. 600 species is quite a large number. And 1/3 of these vertebrates belong to the wetlands. Okay, so you should understand that wetlands play a very, very important role. And if Chennai, despite all its development, is still able to hold so much biodiversity, wetlands are making a very huge contribution. Okay, so that is the first message. This morning I saw IUCN news, which said wetlands are disappearing faster than forests. Okay, this many people know wetlands are disappearing faster than forests. So wetlands have to be given much more importance than forests. Why is it so? Because majority of the wetlands in the world have had some connection with people. Either they were modified by people, they were maintained by people, or entirely created by people. Okay. Unlike forests, wetlands are very much human dependent. So we have to play a very important role in managing them. We have to make sure invasive species don't get in there. We have to make sure that the water flow is maintained. This morning somebody spoke about hydrological flows, ecological flows. A minimum amount of water has to enter our wetlands and a minimum amount of water has to go out. Okay. Many people say, many politicians, you would have heard them during their speech say, we won't allow 1 drop of rainwater to go into the sea. You would have heard that, because people say, I will not allow 1 drop of rainwater to go into the sea. But that is wrong because we have this minimum hydrological flows. A minimum amount of water has to enter our seas, otherwise our seas will become like the Dead Sea. It will become too saline, no organisms can live, nothing can happen. So many realities in life we normally don't realize. So there has to be these things happening. Wetlands have to have inflow, wetlands have to have outflow. Okay, this is very important that we need to maintain. So that only people can do. So wetland maintenance, people have a very big role. So you and I can have a very big role in maintaining our wetlands. Okay, so Chennai is the best place. There's plenty of wetlands, and we also have a big history of how Chennai's wetlands disappeared. Long time. Where did it go? Spur time. Where did it go? All these have disappeared because people have filled them up and used them for other purposes. Now, wetlands are also ecologically transitional. You know what transitional is? It is somewhere in between. It is neither land nor a lake. So if we don't manage it properly over a period of time, it can become land. That is what we are seeing in most of it. Invasive plants get in, they will have prosopis grow, grass grows, and eventually our wetland loses its capacity to hold water. And then it dries up. Okay. So it has to be carefully maintained. Unlike forests where you simply allow it, trees will grow, succession will take over, and so on. Wetlands will have to be actively managed. So we have to come up with some way of doing it. So this is what I think we should have got in our minds during the past few days. And when we go home, we should think over it. And you are young people, many of you are in the first year. So you can think about projects, you can think about small projects, short-term projects, and so on. And because Dr. Aparna Bhatwe showed you all those beautiful hilltop, whatever, wetlands, the rock outcrops and so on. You don't have to feel bad. There are plenty of that in Chennai also. Okay, you go to Nanmangalam Reserve Forest near between Velaseri and Tambaram. You go there, if you go there between November and January, you will see all that there. You will see Drosera, you will see all kinds of plants that she showed, except for those which are endemic to the Western Ghats. All these are there. So why I am saying all this is that if you think that you can do research only when you go to Silent Valley or you go to some other place, it never happens. You have things at your doorstep. You know, you have things at your doorstep. You have wetlands at your doorstep. You have biodiversity at your doorstep. You have birds at your doorstep. And you're all privileged to study in institutions where there is a morale. You know, that is very important. Ultimately, when you go, you are all driven by your morale. You know, something you believe, something you want to act on. Okay, so I don't know if I have bored you, but then I want to tell you that when you go home, think about it and make a decision about what you are going to do in future for your wetlands. And Chennai is a place which is in dire need of having your wetlands conserved. How best you could do it? You write projects, you take photographs, you showcase it. You know, there is so many social media through which you can, show your concerns. Share it. Form a small group on your campus, a wetland conservation group. You work together, meet periodically, sit and discuss, make presentations, call experts, have discussions. So this program should have sown the seed for a future of wetlands in Chennai. That is my only wish, because otherwise we listen to a lot of things and then it comes through this year and goes out through that year. That should not happen. And I'm very grateful to all of you for giving me this time and allowing me to say whatever I wanted to say. I hope you enjoyed this program, and I'm confident that this would have been a kind of turning point. This is going to make a big difference, and Chennai is going to benefit by this conference. And we will take forward the mission of saving Chennai's wetlands. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such an inspiring and meaningful address. Your insights and experiences have added great value to the symposium and has left us with much to reflect upon and carry forward. I now invite Dr. Vanita Williams Sakanina to present the rapporteur's report of this symposium. This will offer us a comprehensive summary of the proceedings of its conference.
Good afternoon. As we come to the close of the International Symposium on Wetlands, Ecological Significance, Threats and Conservation Strategies in SWETCONS 26, as a convener, I present a brief report. The symposium started with an inaugural session, and the chief guest for that was Dr. Deepak Samuel. And he delivered the inaugural keynote address, where he focused on the critical issue of invasive species in coastal and marine wetlands. The address highlighted the role of wetlands as environmental filters, emphasizing the importance of maintaining ecological balance and water quality. He outlined the major threats to wetlands with particular emphasis on biological invasions and their impact on native biodiversity and ecosystem functioning. Reference was made to Global Invasive Species Database as a key resource for understanding the distribution, impacts, and management of invasive species all over the world. Dr. Samuel further discussed the concept of phenotypic plasticity as a driving factor behind the successful establishment of invasive species in wetland ecosystem. The keynote set the thematic foundation for the symposium by understanding the ecological significance of wetlands, the growing threats they face, and the need for informed science-based conservation strategies. The theme for the second session was wetland restoration, and the resource person was Dr. T.V. Ramachandra from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He highlighted the importance of Bangalore Lakes Information System as a tool for sustainable management of urban lakes, emphasizing the principle of no waste in the ecosystem. The address discussed the impact of climate change on wetland health and water security. The speaker drew attention to the drastic decline in the number of lakes and wetlands in Bangalore due to unplanned urbanization and wetland encroachment. The role of wetlands in groundwater recharge was emphasized, along with how degradation has led to urban flooding and water scarcity. The lecture underscored the urgent need for wetland conservation and integrated urban planning for sustainable water management. The third session was based on the biodiversity of wetlands. Dr. Tej Mulkar emphasized the role of waterbird and wetland monitoring in promoting biodiversity conservation in India and across the Central Asian flyway. The address explained the importance of monitoring nature, with waterbirds serving as key indicators of wetland productivity and ecological health. The speaker highlighted how bird migration fosters international collaborations, making monitoring efforts cost-effective while enabling the documentation of diversity and abundance of waterbirds and assessment of their use of wetland habitats. The references was made to regional flyways spanning taxa from butterflies to the gigantic whales and to global initiatives such as the International Waterbird Census, including the coastal counts. The fourth session was chaired by Ms. Anjana Venkatesan, and it was based on the theme Ecosystem Services and Cultural Significance of Wetlands. Ms. Anjana presented an overview of wetland ecosystem services, highlighting their provisioning, regulating, cultural, and supporting functions. Using Madambakam Shipperi, that is Tangal, as a case study, the talk emphasized the cultural significance of wetlands, including the role of traditional knowledge, faith, and spirituality in their conservation. She underscored the link between wetlands, local livelihoods, and the wise use of wetland resources, advocating community-based approaches for sustainable wetland conservation. That marked the end of the first day of the symposium. On the second day, moving on to the next session, chaired by Dr. Aparna Vathve, the theme was Safeguarding Unique Wetland Ecosystems. Dr. Aparna highlighted the role of ephemeral wetlands on rock outcrops, its biodiversity and conservation significance. Now, these rock outcrops occurring within grasslands and forest landscapes undergo dramatic seasonal transformation during monsoon when the dry rocky surfaces temporarily convert into ephemeral wetlands. These wetlands facilitate nutrient flow through rainwater accumulation and they support unique ecological processes. They are the centers of high endemism, diversification, and speciation and function as natural seed banks for hydrophytic plants. The characteristic ephemeral flush vegetation that emerges during the monsoon is largely insect pollinated and wind dispersed. Notably, these habitats support carnivorous plants such as Drosera and Utricularia species, where carnivory represents an important adaptive strategy to the nutrient poor conditions. Seasonal rock pools become biodiversity hotspots just after a monsoon, and they are often described as gardens of heaven. And they also harbor fairy shrimps, zillions, soft-shelled turtles. I'm sure the beautiful pictures of the vibrant flowers still remain fresh in our minds. Beyond biodiversity support, these ecosystems provide critical ecosystem services, and also preserve the cultural heritage. Despite their ecological and cultural importance, ephemeral wetlands on rock outcrops face significant threats, particularly from landscape conversion associated with large-scale infrastructure and development projects. Conservation of these fragile ecosystems is therefore essential. Many of us may not have even thought about these rock outcrops as these are temporary wetlands, but they are also very important because they sustain a huge number of life forms. Now, the previous session was based on the theme, the global status of research in aquatic biodiversity, chaired by Dr. Subramanian from Zoological Survey of India, where he spoke about the diversity and conservation of aquatic insects in India. He emphasized that aquatic insects play crucial roles in freshwater ecosystems and hold significant medical, cultural, and ecological importance. I'm sure all of us are familiar with the mosquito menace now. Although freshwater constitutes only a very small fraction of the Earth's water resources, it supports an exceptionally high species diversity. Aquatic insects occupy a wide variety of habitats and microhabitats. They belong to approximately 13 different orders, each with different ecological roles. The larval stages are morphologically and functionally very different from the adults. I'm sure you remember about the dragonflies, the odonates, the adults, and the nymphal stages. Mayfly larvae and the dragonfly larvae possess gills, and they're also adapted to fast-flowing waters, and they have very diverse mouthpart structures. Aquatic insects also demonstrate pronounced sexual dimorphism and territorial behavior. We see that he also emphasized that there is a trajectory of biodiversity decline in these freshwater habitats. And this has been the driver of biodiversity loss. And he also emphasized that there are several factors that cause insect population decline. Dr. Lucy Turner from the University of Plymouth, the theme was based on wetlands for food security and sustainable future. She spoke about freshwater crab biology and its aquaculture potential, where she suggested an alternate to the freshwater shrimps, that is the freshwater crabs for protein security. And she was talking about a species of crabs that are commonly found in the Western Ghats. She also spoke about the physiological diversity of these crabs and their socio-economic aspects. Though most vulnerable to climate change, apparently they are the most economically important macro-invertebrate group. Now, these 2 days has truly been a roller coaster ride for some of us. And I'm sure that through these sessions, a lot of effort, as Sir mentioned, has gone into organizing this international symposium just to create an awareness among all of you, all the participants. So through these rich and diverse sessions, I'm sure it certainly deepened your scientific understanding of wetland ecology and management and helped us to critically identify the various threats in order to explore various innovative conservation approaches, because we certainly cannot turn a blind eye to the threats. As human beings, we should see how best we can save our wetlands. And we, as Dr. Ranjit Daniels mentioned, it is very clearly said in the Bible that we as human beings are called to be custodians of the earth, and we must love our wetlands, and we must love all the creatures on this earth. Every creature on this earth has the right to live, just like you and me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for presenting a clear and comprehensive report of the proceedings. I kindly request all the participants to please scan the QR code displayed on the screen and fill out the feedback form. Your feedback is extremely valuable as it helps the organizing committee understand the experience and effectiveness of the sessions. We would greatly appreciate it if you could take a few moments to complete the form, as your responses will guide us in planning an even better academic programs in the future. Kindly note that submission of the feedback form is required for the issuance of certificates.
Are you able to scan it? Or you want us to move it?
It's fine. I minimized it.
Okay.
I'm not
This is a kind reminder to all the participants who have not yet filled out the feedback form. Please scan the QR code on the screen and submit your feedback. Thank you. We now move on to the participant feedback. At every academic gathering, the reflections of participants help us understand the impact of the program and guide us in shaping better initiatives in the future. We will now listen to a few participants who have kindly agreed to share their experiences in ISPEDCONS 26. I now invite Dr. Sunil Kumar, Assistant Professor, Department of Zoology, Madras Christian College, Chennai, to share his feedback and experiences on ISPEDCONS 26.
Good evening, all of you. It's my pleasure to give the feedback today for this ISPEDCONS 26. If you see the symposium, first thing I liked was the panel of speakers. It was a very good selection of kind of speakers, which constituted Dr. Deepak Samuel. Which constituted Dr. Deepak Samuel, Dr. Ranjit Dayal sir, then Dr. Tej Gundkur, right, and Dr. Aparna, Ms. Sanjana, and so on. See, other thing is, if you see their presentations, right from the first line till the end, how they started their work, what they have done, and how they have presented their data. For every researcher, it's a very good lesson, and they might have definitely understood better, and there is a takeaway to the symposium. Right, and today, last when Ranjit sir spoke, it was a great takeaway. That is, we have to love all the wetlands nearby us first and everywhere. Right? Thank you, sir. And I thank on behalf of the MCC participants and also all the participants here, and congratulate the head of the Department of Zoology, WCC, and all the faculty members for having conducted the symposium in a very beautiful way and a meaningful way. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for expressing your experiences and perspectives with us. I now invite Ms. Sandhya, Research Scholar, Department of Zoology, Queen Mary's College, to share her feedback and experiences from ISPEDCONS 26.
Good evening, everyone. I take this opportunity to thank and express my sincere gratitude to the organizers for making this event successful and to all the resource persons for sharing their knowledge on wetlands and its conservations. The talk by Dr. Deepak Samuel on invasive species in coastal and marine wetland were very informative and I would like to answer the questions he asked yesterday. Totally, he asked us how many Ramsar sites are there in India. There are 96 Ramsar sites are there in India currently. Among them, in Tamil Nadu, we have 20 Ramsar sites. And the session by Dr. T.V. Ramachandra on Bangalore Lake Information System, Sustainable Development Practices Way, very inspiring. It motivated us to follow a sustainable way of life. Session by Dr. Tej enlightened us the various efforts taken for the biodiversity conservation through water birds and wetland monitoring. We would like to thank Dr. Ranjit Daniels and Ms. Anjana Venkatesan for their untiring efforts in environmental education and conservation. And Dr. Aparna has educated us about the ephemeral wetlands and their floral and faunal diversity. Dr. K. Subramanian gave a detailed account on diversity and conservation of aquatic insects of India. And Dr. Lucy Turner highlighted her work on ecophysiology, crabs, and food security. I would like to share a few quotes. Who speaks for the planet Earth? If not you, who? If not now, when? And we are happy to be a part of this wonderful session. Once again, thank you everyone and have a great evening.
Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Dr. Ranjit Daniels, ecologist, co-founder and trustee, Care Earth Trust, and Ms. Anjana Venkatesan, Program Lead Policy Research, Water and Wetlands Conservation, Living Labs, Care Earth Trust, served as judges for both the poster and photography competitions. I now invite Dr. Anita Williams, the convener of ISWETCONS, to felicitate Dr. Ranjit Daniels. I now invite Dr. Jansi Merlin, the treasurer of ISWETCONS 26, to felicitate Ms. Anjana Venkatesan. So, the moment we've all been waiting for. Yes, it's time for the prize distribution ceremony. Before I announce the winners, I would like to appreciate all the participants for their enthusiasm and all the efforts they put in for these competitions. Remember that everyone here is a winner. It must have been difficult for the judges to evaluate since every single participant exhibited exceptional talent. I invite our esteemed valedictory speaker, Dr. Ranjit Daniels, to kindly distribute the prizes. Let us now start with the poster presentation competition. The third place is shared by Ms. Hannah Perlin Hepsiba, Department of Wildlife Biology, Kongamadu, Art and Science College, Coimbatore, for the poster on the title Preliminary Survey of Bird Diversity of Restored Wetlands in Tirunelveli. And by Ms. Radhika Satish, Department of International Studies, Women's Christian College, Chennai, for the poster on the title Protecting the Wetlands Beyond Utility, a case study of Webinar Coal Wetlands. place goes to Ms. Pavitra, PG and Research Department of Zoology, Wetlands College, Chennai, for the poster on the title, Affirming Identification and Impact of Microplastics on Different Regions of the Southeast Coast of Chennai. The first place goes to Ms. Esther Joy, the Department of English, Women Christian College, Chennai, for the poster on the title Songs from the Marshes, Community, Memory, Survival, Wetlands as Living Archives of Ecological Knowledge. We now move on to the photography competition on the theme Culinary Heritage and Traditional Crafts of Wetlands. The third place is shared by Ms. Chandini and Ms. Helen Margaret of the Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, University College, Chennai. The second place goes to Ms. Kirtana, Department of International Studies, Women Christian College, Chennai. The first place goes to Ms. Hadita, Department of International Studies, Women Christian College, Chennai. The inaugural performance left a lasting impression, powerfully highlighting the need for wetland conservation and the threats faced by these fragile ecosystems. It beautifully brought out the echoes of the wetlands, the urgent need for conservation, and the harsh realities threatening these ecosystems, and concluded with an impactful visuals of newspaper clippings reflecting biodiversity loss. I now invite Ms. Discasheni, Ms. Hannah Gifty, and Ms. Yashwini Gupta, third year students of the Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, WCC, to receive a token of appreciation for choreographing the performance Echoes of the Wetland, which so effectively convey the spirit of wetland conservation. It is just a visual symbol. It reflects the identity, vision, and spirit of an event. It communicates the theme and leaves a lasting impression. The official logo of ISWETCONS 26 symbolizes wetland biodiversity and conservation. It features three iconic wetland birds, the grey-headed swarmhead, the pond heron, and the great egret. This official logo is a fusion of beautiful designs created by our winners in the logo design competition. Their creativity has given a unique visual identity to this symposium. I now invite Ms. Sharaya, third-year student, and Ms. Sienna Joseph Rodriguez, first-year student, from the Department of Advanced Geology and Biotechnology, WCC, to receive this level of appreciation for designing the official logo of ISWETCON 26. I sincerely thank our esteemed valedictory speaker, Dr. Ranjit Daniels, for distributing the prizes and for encouraging the participants. Once again, I would like to congratulate all the winners for their outstanding achievements. To acknowledge and thank all those who have made ISWETCONS 26 a meaningful and successful academic event, I now invite Dr. Benita Golda, the organizing secretary, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sangamitra. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. One of the most pleasant yet one of the most toughest things to do at the end of the day, right? To thank you all waiting to run away. So I'll try to make it as quick as possible, a little bit formal and informal, right? First and foremost, let me begin by thanking God Almighty for being a constant source of guidance. Right from day one till this very moment, we felt His guidance, presence in all that we did. Next, I would like to record our sincere gratitude to Dr. Lillian I. Jasper, our Principal and Secretary, Women's Christian College. She's a constant source of support, encouragement, and she's a visionary leader who always encourages us in all that we do. Next, we also like to thank the management of Women's Christian College for their generous support, particularly in funding the publication of our book, A Pocket Guide to Wetland Birds in and around Chennai. Our heartfelt thanks go to all our esteemed resource persons, Dr. Deepak Samuel, Dr. T.V. Ramachandra, Dr. Tej Bundkar, Ms. Anjana Venkatesan, Dr. Aparna Vatre, Dr. K.S. Subramanian, and Dr. Lucy Turner, whose expertise and insights have enriched this symposium. We would like to place on record our deep and sincere appreciation to Care Earth Trust for the invaluable support extended from the very first day, from the planning of the symposium to this very moment. The guidance of Dr. Ranjit Daniels, in fact, and Dr. Anjana strengthened the academic content of ISWETCONS 26. We also sincerely thank Care Earth Trust for permitting access to their library and research resources, which greatly supported our research and preparation for the book. Their wholehearted involvement has been instrumental in the success of this symposium. Thank you, sir, for giving us a brief insight on how we should be effective stewards of the wetlands and of God's earth that's given to us. We sincerely thank both of them for being judges for the photography and the poster competition. In fact, it was a very tough competition. So I was surprised to see a lot of people from WC. It was like
those of you who participated know, you were only given numbers and nothing was, it is judged very sincerely by both of them. So I would like to thank them for the time and the keen evaluation and encouragement that they provided to the participants. We also place on record a sincere appreciation to Vignesh printers for their professional and seamless execution of printing the book. Their timely support and high quality workmanship played a vital role in bringing this publication to fruition. I place on record my deep appreciation to the organizing committee for their dedicated efforts. Special word of thanks to Dr. Vanita Williams, our convener, for a tireless work in shaping the sessions, developing the agenda, coordinating the resource persons, securing approval, and keeping the entire symposium on track. She left no stones unturned. In fact, right from this bag that we're holding, it was a little tilted to the other end. She said, no, we have to get it done, redone. So it was redone for your information. I also thank our treasurer, Dr. Janti Malin, for designing the invites, the strategy, for efficiently and for very efficiently handling all the finances. I will fail my duty if I do not thank our organizing committee members who work behind the scenes tirelessly. Dr. Annie Rubin, you know. After giving her the responsibility of registration, I could just rest. We could just rest. She entirely took charge. Thank you, Dr. Julia, and also Dr. Christina. Thank you. Thank you for that. I definitely that is displayed. Tirelessly also hand building every gift that was given. Thank you. Our appreciation to the masters of ceremony, Meera, Nicola, Carol, Sarika, Bharna, Pandvi, Chandani Concordia, Hannah Giti, Pandavika. Thank you. Thank you for anchoring the sessions with confidence and grace. Thank you. We come as the choreography team, Jiska, Yashwini, Hannah Giti, Agil, Delphi, Purvi, Maisha, Rubina, Delphi, Pushpa Raya, Claire, and I. Thank you for your dedicated efforts and for this elegant coordination. All of us thoroughly equal. You brought the theme so beautifully. Thank you. We thank Chandani and Grace for contributing to that much needed support. Thank you. Our very special thanks to two people, Oliver and Cinderella. Are you here? Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Cinderella, for the very warm hospitality you extended to Dr. C.V. Ramachandra, our stay on campus. We acknowledge Jeffrey Catherine. Jeffrey, are you here? Okay. You must have seen her with a camera. She covered every minute of the event. Thank you, Jeffrey, for that. There was also one person who was covering it. Joseph, are you here? Yes. She volunteered. Even after that, she volunteered. Thank you, Joseph, for that. For registration, the student coordinators, ladies, please do stand up. Divya, Charlene, Hasini, Bhavna, Rachel, Seven, Chandani. You did an amazing job. Thank you. During the inaugural and the book release, we appreciate the students who took responsibility for various arrangements. I'm going to call out the names if you're in your place. Please wait. Tanya and Nisha, for asking during the Thank you, Nisha. Thank you, Tanya. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Nisha. Yes, I did see you with her. I'm sorry I missed you out there. Thank you for your support with the client. Okay. Devadarshini and Rishi Janani. You saw the picture when you were discussion ready. Thank you. Madhu and Aminu very quietly they did what they had to do. Quietly doing their responsibility. Hospitality very sincerely. Thank you so much. Jency and Maisha, again for hospitality. Sally, Saraya, in their melodious voices for rendering Tamil Thai வாழ்த்து. Thank you so much. Silva, Karmila, Murphy and Soumya. You may not have seen them, but they were there standing always behind the stage and doing. Thank you, Murphy. Thank you, Silva, Karmila and Soumya. Now you heard the alma mater sung beautifully. All the voices blended so beautifully. That is thanks to Christabel and her team, Rubina, Nikhila, Hannah, Vicky, Agnes, Rania, Shavira, and Lydia. In fact, when they were called, someone to come and start the prayer song on the inaugural, they were there. They had multiple things. You will hear names getting repeated. So they were more than one team, so they so beautifully, seamlessly did what they had to do. Thank you so much, ladies. We also thank the hospitality team, Gladys, Lydia, Charlene, Rania, Rajati, Deva, Nesha, Hannah Burji, and Sanjeev for your gracious service and attentive care of our guests. Finally, I will failing in my duty if I do not extend my sincere thanks to all of you participants, faculty members, research scholars, students from Women's Christian College and from other colleges also. Thank you so much for your presence. Hugely enriched this symposium. Let me also place on record this support staff who behind the scenes work tirelessly to get the place organized. Once again, thank you all for being part of this journey towards understanding, conserving, and protecting our precious wetlands. Thank you so very much.
I would like to thank our organizing secretary, Dr. Venita. So you see the beautiful banner right at the back on the LED screen. That was a picture that was taken at Nemili. You can see the Vigians. And that banner there, that picture was taken at Vedandanam. And it was Dr. Benita who got the banner ready. She gave multiple visits to the Xerox center and she sat with them. I'm sure Kendall is hiding from her right now. And you see that so beautifully done. It was because of her. And also in the trophies, that lovely sticker that you see was also coordinated by Dr. Benita. And I'm sure you saw the beautifully displayed posters and photographs, neatly all uniformly, or in the that beautiful wooden frame. So the organizing secretary coordinated that. Thank you, Benita.
Thank you, ma'am, for beautifully expressing gratitude to all who made the symposium a success. I now invite the third year students of our department to kindly lead us in the alma mater, followed by the national anthem. I request everyone to kindly rise.
We walk from here to here. We will see our majestic wisdom and knowledge dollars give to all. Living as we go forth, desiring light into light, in bravely on we go. Don't be with thee, our college, Lord protect thee. His light shine through thee now and ever.
Thanks for that. Everyone, please be seated. I kindly request all the participants to be seated. Thank you. As this valedictory session comes to a close, Wetlands 26 stands as a meaningful academic journey marked by insightful deliberation, enriching interactions, and a shared commitment to wetland conservation. The symposium has provided a valuable platform for learning, reflection, and collaboration. It is hoped that the knowledge gained and the perspectives shared during these days will continue to inspire research, awareness, and action towards the protection of wetlands and their biodiversity. Thank you all for your esteemed presence and enthusiastic participation. Wishing you a safe journey and continued success in your future endeavors. Thank you. Announcement. May I kindly have your attention? Faculty members, research scholars, and students from other colleges, participants from other departments, WCC, are requested to kindly sign and collect your certificates at the registration desk outside the Bertha Caulfield Auditorium. Students of AHPT department will receive their certificates tomorrow. I repeat, faculty members, research scholars, and students from other colleges, participants from other departments WCC are requested to kindly sign and collect your certificates at the registration desk outside the Bertha Caulfield Auditorium. Thank you.